So initially, I did not plan on making this video. You know, WWDC, usually I do make recap videos, but this year before, there was just no hype to me for WWDC. I just felt like there were going to be minor updates throughout. I didn't feel like covering it, so I wasn't going to make a video, but of course, since you're watching this, something has changed, and that is that iOS 14 and macOS Big Sur are huge updates, and I just have to talk about them. So this time around, something unique about the event was that it was not held in person. Usually WWDC keynotes are held in person. You know, a room full of developers are there for it. It's kind of like their biggest meeting of the year. And the developers this time around, of course, couldn't come to Cupertino because of the virus. So Apple made the entire presentation pre-recorded and completely online, and that was actually fantastic. I loved the way it was paced. It was just the on-stage nature of this event. Actually, I've never enjoyed too much. It felt very elongated, dragged out, so it was nice to have a quick, concise, well-paced event throughout. I really didn't get bored for a single minute throughout the 2 hours. So right off the bat, they started with iOS. So iOS actually got a much larger update than anyone anticipated. I don't think anybody saw this coming, and usually software leaks aren't as prevalent as hardware leaks with Apple, so this was a very pleasant surprise. So iOS 14 has one of the biggest new features, I think, is widget and a new kind of app layout here. So now you can get rid of the pages and pages of apps. You can hide pages of apps, and you get a little nice app folder at the end where it's kind of like Android's app drawer, but they're all grouped into similar apps, and you can search them from the top if you want, or they're all automatically bunched together based on what they are, and it's a lot nicer that way. And you can just have one or two main pages on your phone screen so that it gets really nice and organized and kind of the way you want it. And the second biggest thing is the new support for widgets. So Apple finally has added widgets. I know this is something that people have wanted for years. You know, they've been complaining you can't customize it. The home screen looks so boring. There's only app icons. So finally you get these new beautiful widgets. There's going to be a lot of different ones. I'm hoping third-party support gets these widgets going even further, and we get some really cool ones. So, you know, those are the two biggest ones. And then there's, of course, picture-in-picture as well. Apple finally has brought support over to the iPhone for picture-in-picture. Another key change is that Siri is no longer going to take up your entire screen. It's going to be a small little icon at the bottom when you engage her, and that's going to be a big help. Before, it used to take up your entire screen. Now it's going to be a lot smaller, and it's supposed to be a lot smarter as well, and it's going to, claimed by Apple, of course, that they're going to have a lot better awareness for questions, and instead of just showing you online results for most questions you ask it, they will try to grab them from sources and just tell you the answer instead of giving you a bunch of results for web pages. So with additions to improvement in Siri, they are also focusing on-device voice dictation. So when you dictate something to convert it to text, they're going to focus on doing this on device because of another new app called Translate. So Translate, as it says, it's for translating languages, and they're going to try to do this on device. So you can, of course, do it online, but you can download the languages to have them support offline translation as well. So this is laid out to be a little bit more conversational. I did mess around with a little bit, definitely needs a little bit more improvement and polishing, and it's only available in 11 languages for now, but it's a good step. So let's talk about the Messages app. The Messages app has gotten a pretty nice overhaul as well. While it looks similar, there's going to be a few new things such as pinned conversation, so you can pin a person or groups that you want on the top so that they don't get lost in the mix. It's going to be really nice for people who have their message out bombarded with spam messages. It's going to be really nice to have the top chats right there at the top every time you open up the app. Also, there's going to be improvements to group chats, which I think a lot of people have wanted. You get mentions and you get inline replies as well. So that's going to be very helpful to keep track of what's going on. It's definitely improving. I think they're still a little bit behind some of the other apps like WhatsApp and Telegram, but they're getting there, I think. So the rest of the stuff with iOS is just really kind of not that interesting, but I will list them off so you guys know what's going on. There's CarPlay update that gives you more apps and a wallpaper. You get Car Key that will replace car keys eventually. There's going to be something called App Clips, which is going to allow you to basically scan a NFC tag to open up apps or something within an app easier. Activity app redesigned and named to Fitness now. Sleep tracking is now enabled, and you have something called a wind down mode, which will help you get to sleep easier. It'll turn on Do Not Disturb, it'll hide notifications, all that kind of stuff. There's a new location approximation instead of sharing your exact location. So you can choose if you want to share your exact location or the approximate location that you're in for your own privacy. There's going to be a new indicator at the top of the status bar on the right above the phone signal bar. So it's going to be a little dot that's going to show if your mic or camera is in use. So if any app is using this and you didn't know, now they're going to be caught. And if you want, you can ask apps not to allow you to be tracked. So every time you open a new app, it should ask you, do you want to be tracked or not? The developers are going to have to send this out. There's no getting around it. And I think the most important thing that is going to be there privacy-wise is a new section within the App Store where an app developer has to self-report the information that they take and they share. So they're going to have to, self-report what they're going to get, if they're going to get what kind of data, and if they're going to share this. It's going to be a really nice way to make sure that you are in control of what is going to be shared of your own personal data. So let's move on to the iPadOS. Now this is another thing that I'm very excited about. One of the biggest changes we have with iPadOS is going to be that there is a new look on a lot of apps where there's going to be a sidebar element. So like a lot of computers and what we've seen with Finder, there's a sidebar with all the important navigation links. So iPad didn't have this. It was really based on the iPhone for the longest time, but now iPadOS is definitely getting its own look and feel. So that's going to be a very good improvement. And this should be seen within a lot of Apple stock apps. And I feel like a lot of developers are going to get used to adopting this as well, especially since iPads have such larger screens now, 11-inch, 12.9-inch. Taking advantage of that real estate is just, it should have been done way earlier. And of course, it does have the same features as iOS. I forgot to mention that. And another cool feature that this is the one thing I wanted, the only thing I wanted. I said that if I got this one feature in iOS and iPadOS, I was going to be completely happy. I didn't care if they did nothing else, and they did it. So I'm very happy, and that is finally, when you get a call, your entire screen is not blocked. You get a small little notification up top when your phone is unlocked and you're using, so it doesn't block your screen. So if you want to just screen a call, you don't have to wait for the entire call to go through. You can just have that little notification pane at the top, and this will work with WhatsApp, Skype, every VoIP app that will that handles calls. It will work with them. So that's finally great news, and I'm so happy Apple finally decided to come into the developed world where this has been a standard on Android for years. I am so happy about that. iPad search is becoming a lot nicer. So the search element that's on the home screen, it is going to be available everywhere throughout the entire user experience. Anywhere you want within any app, you can use the search, and it's going to be a lot more diverse. You can directly enter web searches. You can look for apps. You can look for contacts. You can look for things within apps as well, within documents. So that's going to be a nice feature, and it's definitely going to improve the feeling that this is a computer and not just a blown up iPhone. And the last thing that is a little bit unique to the iPad right now is because it's the only one that supports Apple Pencil, is that there is a new scribble feature, which is technically drawing to text. So you just draw something on the screen in certain areas where they're allowing this, and it will convert it to text. So say you open Safari and you want to search something, all you got to do is take your Apple Pencil, type it up at the top near the search bar, and say you just type that in, draw that in, and that gets converted to text, and it just searches itself. So that's a cool thing for somebody who likes to use the pencil a lot. Personally, I haven't really done that too much, so I don't think it's going to be too big of a change for me. But for those who like that, especially within drawing apps, I think that might be helpful, where you write something up and it gets converted to text immediately. So that's going to be nice. And there's another key change that applies to both iPhone and iPadOS, and that is that you can now set your default email and web browsers. So that's going to be an update. That's going to be in iOS 14 and iPadOS 14. It's something that people have asked for a long time. So a lot of people don't use the stock Mail app or Safari for web browsing. So it's going to be nice for them to have that set throughout the system, so that when you get a link from somewhere, or you have a app that says Mail or something where they have hyperlinks, it's going to open you up directly to the app that you use and not to the stock Apple app, which many people, of course, do not use. So another, I did not expect this from Apple. So there are actually AirPods updates as well. So this software event is really covering all the bases here. So AirPods, and this has to be, I think, one of the most important and longer lasting impacts of a feature that will come in to play this time around is going to be this feature called automatic switching on AirPods. So I'll throw up the clip that the presentation showed, but what it basically does is when you're connected to AirPods, it will recognize which device you're using and automatically switch to it. So now say I'm using my iPhone to listen to music, but I suddenly pick up my iPad to watch a TV show, it'll know I did that and it'll switch my AirPods right over. Now say I get a group meeting call on my Mac while I'm sitting there and I start using that, my AirPods will automatically know that I'm doing that and switch over from my iPad to my Mac. And same way around. Mac, if I'm using my Mac and I get a call on my iPhone, it'll automatically switch to the iPhone so that I can answer my call and I don't have to do anything. This is all handled automatically. Now, beforehand, if you wanted to switch which input you were using, you'd have to go into the Bluetooth app of the device you wanted to go. Bluetooth setting, and you'd have to tap on your AirPods Pro. Not the most difficult thing, but it almost felt like any other Bluetooth headset at that point. Pairing was super easy, but connecting and changing the connection was kind of barbaric. And I'm so happy that Apple has finally done this. And if you are not in the ecosystem, this is one of the key things that I think once you get into the ecosystem and get used to, you will never want to go back. It's just going to be that seamless, and I'm telling you guys, this is one of the most underrated things that they've brought out this year, and it is going to impact a lot of people in a very positive way. And finally, in AirPods news, AirPods Pro will be getting something called Spatial Audio. So it's going to be kind of a surround sound effect based on gyroscope and accelerometer information, and they're going to try to create a nice surround sound experience using the AirPods Pro. This is only applicable to the AirPods Pro, not going to be applicable to the other AirPods, but I am excited to see what it feels like. I am a little bit skeptical. The way they presented this, it sounded super complicated, so I'm not sure if you're really going to be able to enjoy this or if it's going to really feel, like it's impacting you, because I feel like a lot of these apps and things I listen to are not optimized for this anyway, so I might not notice it, but it'll be cool to see if this actually comes into play. Moving on, let's talk about watchOS. watchOS was actually a very quick update, not much going on. You can now share watch faces with other people, which is going to be nice. So if you customize your own face and a lot of people like it, all you got to do is share it with them, and that automatically gets installed onto their Apple Watch. There's a few new workouts now with dance, core training, and there's cool down as well. A feature that people have been asking for a while is now added, which is sleep tracking. So sleep tracking with your watch will be really nice, and it'll adapt, and it will become a little bit darker. It won't disturb you at night. And then when you wake up, it'll show you a lot of information stuff. So it's going to be nice to finally have sleep tracking. And there's going to be a new feature, which is actually pretty cool. What Apple is doing is using the motion of your hand to identify when you're washing your hand, and also use their mics to identify if there's running water. And if it hears that and it satisfies it, what it'll do is it'll start a countdown clock of 20 seconds when you wash your hands, so you know exactly how long to wash your hands. Now, a lot of people said this was stupid, but honestly, I was low-key, thinking about having a feature like this, because right now with the virus, I've been washing my hands so much more than I usually do, and I've been a lot more conscious of how long I've been washing my hands. So usually I count down in my head, slowly, but I always feel like, man, if my watch did this for me, it would have been so much nicer, and they actually did it. So that's awesome, and I'm really happy that they did that. Now, moving on, let's talk about HomeKit and tvOS. This was actually a very, very small part of the event. They really glossed over a lot of this stuff quickly. So the kind of highlights and takeaways here is that HomeKit is now going to allow for a new feature with smart bulbs called adaptive lighting. So kind of like night shift or true tone, as the day goes on, it will change the temperature of the lighting, so from warm white to cool white, and kind of just change throughout the day gently, gradually, to provide the perfect lighting temperature throughout the day in your room. It's going to be a very cool thing, and if you have smart bulbs, you're really going to enjoy that, I think. HomeKit now identifies for, it uses camera apps, which I'm guessing like Ring and stuff, to set up monitor zones, so set up zones that you want it monitored and alerts for. and you can also actually use facial recognition from your photos. So now in the Photos app, you have a lot of photos, and you can actually associate faces to photos. And what that'll do is, if somebody pops up at your house within the photos, your HomeKit will actually announce that. So that's a really cool thing, and I'm not sure how well it'll work, but if that does work, I'm super excited to see that. Apple TV now has picture-in-picture as well to support, like camera movement or secondary things like watching the news while you're watching something else. It's going to be super cool. So picture-in-picture is applicable to tvOS as well. tvOS now has multiple user support. They said it's only for games, so they really glossed over this really quickly. It was one line and done. So they're going to have a new multiple profile thing. They were talking about this in the context of games, so that every player's game data is slightly different. I'm not sure which apps are going to be bunched in, like maybe your YouTube app or stuff. If that gets bunched in, that will be cool too, but we'll see that as tvOS rolls out. tvOS now has a new control center as well that looks very similar to the new one on macOS, which I'll talk about a little later, and to what we've seen on the iPhone for a while. And now the last thing with tvOS was that it supports AirPlay up to 4K. So AirPlay was not supported up to 4K up till this point. Now it is. And finally, let's talk about macOS. macOS is, I think it's safe to say that nobody saw this coming. We did not expect a design change. We were expecting stability updates because Catalina was, no other way to put it, it was a mess. It was a garbage fire, and I am so happy that while these changes have come through, I'm also concerned about stability, because this was the year I was hoping they focused on stability. Hopefully they did that. I'm sure they can do both, but as history has shown, sometimes a stability update, it needs to be a stability update. So now I think the biggest takeaway was that this is no longer Mac OS 10. That Mac OS X is done. It's Mac OS 11. This is a big change. They've not done this for years. And finally, we got a new number, Mac OS 11. Mac OS 11 is called Big Sur, so Mac OS 11 BS. So I think they knew what they were doing there, but I don't know. So of course, as I said, there's a redesigned UI. A lot of elements look very different. The icons, logos have all been redesigned to be a little bit more modern, to have a lot more of a similar layout to other devices. There's a new control center, which will allow you to control settings like Bluetooth, brightness, sound, all that with more, modernistic bars and graphs and things like that. So that's going to be nice. I think that a lot of people were wanting this, but didn't know how to get it implemented. I like the way they implemented it. There's a new unified space for notifications and widgets. So when you click on the clock app, it brings up a sidebar with your notifications and then widgets. So that's going to be a really nice addition. But honestly, I'm not going to lie, I don't use the notification pane that much on Mac OS. I'm hoping maybe this time around I will, but history says that I just probably won't. There's new audio effects throughout macOS as well, and they sound really cool. So kind of when you copy paste, there's a new one. When you unlock your MacBook, there's a new one. When you empty the trash, there's a new one. So there's a lot of places where there are new sound effects. So that's really nice. Safari has a bunch of updates as well. So Safari is going to be tracking extensions a lot more now. So it makes sure that extensions aren't just monitoring everything you're doing, which they have been known to do in the past. Safari is going to have a big focus on tracking. So there's going to be a separate tab right near the top bar where you can see how many websites are tracking you on one page. So it's going to be a really nice feature for people who are privacy concerned, and also kind of give away the bad elements, the bad websites that are tracking you way too much. The Safari UI, at least on the homepage, is going to get a little bit of a refresh. You're going to be able to customize it, add things you want, remove it. It's not that big of a deal, but it's definitely going to become a lot more personalized because you can add a background, you can add things you want like iCloud tabs, reading list, all that kind of stuff. And you can remove them if you want as well. If you don't want them, you can have it just plain and simple. And Translate is now built into Safari as well. So Google has had this for a while. I wish that Apple did as well. And finally, since they're doing their own Translate within iOS as well, they just brought it over to macOS and it's built into Safari. So that's awesome. No mention of this, if this is going to be applicable to iPadOS and iOS as well, this Translate, but I'm hoping it is. And finally, this is the biggest thing that's going to have an impact on Apple moving forward in the future, and that is Apple's own silicon, Apple's own chipset. So for so many years, if you guys don't know, Apple has used their own chips for their iPads, their iPhones, and that's why they've been significantly a step above performance-wise in every category that they've been in. So performance from their processors is generally 1 or 2 years ahead of any comparable Android, and it's just been like that for years now. There's no doubt. I don't think there's a single person who will come up to you and argue that Apple doesn't have the fastest chips. They just can't, because they don't have a leg to stand on there. And what has been the case is that for years, though, Apple has not used their own chipsets in their computer. They just never have, and now they're moving towards doing that. So Apple has been using Intel chipsets in their Macs for the longest time, and now they are slowly transitioning from Intel to their own chips. They didn't give a name for it yet. We don't know what it's going to be called, but it is Apple's own built hardware. So what this is going to allow is it's going to be better optimized. You're going to get more efficiency. It's more likely going to be smaller and, allow for more things to be packed on. They have a lot of separate engines as well, so it doesn't, burden the entire CPU with everything. They have a lot of different things built in, which allows for, distributed load. So that's going to be a very interesting. It's just going to be so cool to see how Apple moves on. Because all you have to do is look at how great, these iPhones and iPads run. They are leagues above their competition. And if Apple can scale this up to Mac, honestly, I don't know how these, it's just PCs, Intel chipsets, AMD chipsets, they're going to be smoked if scalability can be matched. Now, we have no idea. Until it comes out later in the year, we won't know. So that's another thing. It does come out later this year, which was a lot sooner than I expected. So the first chipset, Apple's own ones, are going to be launched before the end of the year, they said. And the transition is only going to take 2 years. So within 2 years, every single Mac computer is going to move to their own chipset. So that's a very interesting it's just cool. It's interesting. I didn't expect that to be so quick. So they're definitely on board, and I think that they actually have everything sorted already. That's why their transition is so fast. And also, they did mention something that I wasn't expecting, is that Intel support is obviously going to be there for years. That I expected. What I didn't expect is they said that they're actually going to be releasing a few more Intel computers shortly. So Intel isn't just completely gone from today. It's still going to be introduced through Apple products for a little while, but eventually it's going to be stopped. And let's just wrap this up. So this year, there has been a lot of game-changing things. And not just game-changing, I think a lot of things that were long overdue as well. So I am very happy with how this event went down. I liked all the new updates. One thing I do hope for is that we haven't seen yet is stability. If stability is, iOS 12 level, this is going to be a great success. If stability is not so good, I don't know here, but overall this event was excellent. A lot of new things came out, and I think this event will be remembered in history for a while to come. That's it for this one, guys. Let me know what you thought about WWDC 2020. As I said, I had low expectations going in, but as I kept watching the event, I was blown away. I did not expect this. And for the 2 hours I was watching it, I was not bored for a single minute. So that says a lot. Let me know what you guys thought about it, as I said. And if you haven't already, I would really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel and follow me on social media. I'll have all the links right here. It's been a great one, guys. I really am just so happy with the way things worked out right now. So thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.